Snowflakes fell carefree. They landed where they may, covering the land in a white, puffy blanket. A single tree of many in the forest shook with violent, rhythmic motions, its young life snuffed out in favor of another being's survival. Clumps of snow fell from its branches each time an axe met the wood. The tree was soon felled by strong and expert hands. The lumberjack took a few deep breaths. His shelter was finished, and this maple would prove fuel for his fire. For a few hours more he toiled away at rounding the downed tree. Once finished, he carried them 2 or 3 at a time back to his camp. Another hour of splitting, and he had 3 days' worth of firewood. Night was approaching, which up until a few days ago was an ill omen. The creatures that hunted every living thing and whispered in the dark were gone. The lumberjack was unsure as to why they left, but he was thankful. Maybe animals would come back so he could make use of his traps. His fire snapped and crackled as he sipped on a peppermint tea. Unsplit logs encircled the fire as if he were expecting a party. He would rotate which one he sat at each night to keep things interesting. He was hungry, but not yet starving. The forest provided him enough berries and edible roots to sustain him. He dared not scavenge in towns, not with the wild men kidnapping for their cult, the Commune of After, or some nonsense they called themselves. He had come this far south to stay off their radar. The batteries in his radio had died almost a month ago. Before that, he heard grim news. The creatures had swept away all opposition in an instant. When the news stopped, he would get the occasional distress call. As much as he wanted to help, he stayed put. His own survival usurped the want to help others. The snowfall halted, and stars twinkled in the dark, endless void. That's how he spent every night, lost in infinity. Sleep evaded him anymore. Maybe it was the hunger. Maybe it was just at that age. He sighed and brought his eyes back down to his campfire. He had to blink, because something about the scene before him was different than before he looked heavenward. Something, or someone, sat on the opposite side of the fire from him. His first thought was that it was one of the monsters, but the form was too small. Its outline was lost to the dark wood beyond, and he saw only flitters of firelight cast onto the form. It seemed to be wearing a mask of some type, one with a long bird-like nose. The lumberjack rubbed his eyes, blinked, and stared forward. The shape remained, unmoving, still as a statue. "You real?" the lumberjack asked. His voice cracked from unused vocal cords. Wisps of frozen breath spiraled forward with his words. "As real as the world we find ourselves in," said the shape from behind its mask. The words had a sharp pitch and a melodic quality to them, as if the guests were about to break out in song. "Didn't hear you comin'. Must be as quiet as them creatures," said the lumberjack. "Forgive me for that, friend. These are trying times, and it is not often two people find each other out in the wilderness." "Got that right. Tea?" The shape shook its beaked head. "No, thank you." "What's with the mask?" "It is to keep my identity hidden, amongst other reasons." "Why would you need to do that?" "A good question indeed. Do you know the origin of a mask like this?" The lumberjack shook his head. His guest leaned forward, lacing gloved fingers together under the masked chin. It said, "During the bubonic plague, colloquially known as the Black Death, physicians had little understanding about microbiology. They believed miasma was the cause of the plague, and to smell it would spell certain doom. So, they made masks such as this one and filled the beak with aromatic items, such as lavender and juniper berries. Interesting, is it not? It wasn't exactly the smell that caused the plague, but bacterium. Had it been airborne, the plague doctors would have been protected." "So you, wear it to protect yourself from bacteria or something?" "From certain smells, yes, namely from death. I absolutely cannot stand the smell, yet it follows me relentlessly. You still didn't answer why you want to keep your identity hidden. The shape shifted forward on its log seat. Two glassy orbs atop the beak reflected the campfire like smoldering eyes. It said, "You see, I am looking for someone. I believe he does not know my identity, but I prefer to err on the side of caution all the same." "Who are you looking for?" "The man who killed my wife and child." The lumberjack breathed out long and hard. "Sorry to hear that. Bad enough we got those things out there, but murderers too?" "I must be frank with you, friend. He did not outright murder them. Yet, I was told he is indeed a murderer. It was his atrocious act that made my wife flee a safe place with our child. I found them on the brink of death, and did what I could. It was too late, I am afraid. Before she met her ancestors, she gave me his name and a description." "Sorry all the same." "Have you had many visitors during your time in the wilderness?" "Not a single one. You're the first." The shape paused long enough for the lumberjack to take notice. He was glad for the conversation at first, but the shape gave him the jitters. He glanced down to confirm his felling axe's location by his feet. "That is a shame," the shape said. "Wish I could help. It was nice talking to you," said the lumberjack, dropping a subtle hint that it was time to go. "Am I intruding?" The lumberjack blinked at the shape a few times before answering. "I wouldn't say that. Just seems you're on a mission, and I can't help you is all." "But your fire is so very warm. Are you sure you would not permit me to stay just a bit longer?" The lumberjack's eyes squished together in frustration as he said, "Okay, now I think it's time you left." "I haven't even told you the name of the one I seek." "I don't care. What happened to your wife and child is sad for sure, but what do you think is going on? Most people are dead. The lucky ones were picked apart by the creatures. The only ones left are the sick and starving." "Oh my, have I angered you?" "Damn right you have. You have a screw loose, buddy." The shape held up its hands in defeat, then said, "Very well, I will leave you to your thoughts." With that, the mysterious guest disappeared into the dark void beyond the light of the lumberjack's campfire. The lumberjack tried to squint past the fire's orange aura and strained his ears. It was like the shape vanished into nothing. Either that, or the lumberjack was hallucinating the whole time. He walked the perimeter of his camp, axe in hand, and checked his lean-to shelter. The visitor didn't leave a single footprint in the snow. He was shaken, and thought to himself how little sleep he would have that night. His tea had gone cold, and a fresh, warm cup would calm his nerves. That's what he needed, just another cup. He entered the warmth of his campfire and stooped down to one knee in front of his metal kettle. As he reached for it, he felt a stinging pressure under his chin. It dug into his neck. Breathless, he attempted to stand, but something was keeping him in place. The lumberjack was strong, but whatever force that was choking him was stronger. He rolled his eyes upward, his mouth hanging agape. He saw the underside of the long-beaked mask. "How dare you try to send me away?" came the shape's voice, seething in its melodic tempo, which had turned demonic. The lumberjack reached up and tried to pry himself free. He tried to yell, but all that came out was a watery gurgle. "Those who are unprepared for winter could find themselves lost to the elements on a night such as this. What would become of them if you send them away? How dare you? I have seen what caliber of man you are, and I have found you wanting." Within seconds, the lumberjack lost consciousness. The masked one garroted him for another 2 minutes to finish him off. It hummed a sweet tune while waiting for the lumberjack's pulse to cease. The lumberjack's freshly split wood would not go to waste. It warmed the shape nicely the rest of the night.